Hi team, today I wanted to do a video to talk about assessment in Seqta. As you know, everything changed at the beginning of this year with Seqta, and we never really did much training on how it's different. And there's a few things I think you should know. So I'm going to go down to overview of assessments. Here are my assessments, and I'm going to do a new one, and I'd like to show you what the student view is. So I'm going to, oops, that's not what I want. I'm going to do a new assessment, and it's going to be due today. I'm going to call it Compose a Hit Song, and check the weighting. It's under the strand Explore and Express, which I want. That's correct. Now, here we've been putting our accessible criteria. For example, the first thing might be record 8 bars on Mixcraft. And I've been doing that. Then I've added another criteria, and it might be mix the 8 bars on Mixcraft. And then I might do another label, which might be mix down to MP3 file, for example. And then here I've been adjusting my scores to whatever I want. I'm going to make the first one 8. I'm going to make this one 8. I'm going to make this one 1. And I thought that that's what the students saw when I released all the details. And this is due today. I thought that the students saw this. But then when I went into Masquerade View, here's Dylan Paul, who's in my Music Performance 2 class. When I click on these 3 buttons and I masquerade as him, this is interesting. This is what he sees. And you're going to be amazed because it's a big fat nothing. I don't know if I saved it. Hang on. Just clicked save. Now that will mean that Dylan sees this. If you don't click save, nothing happens. All right, here we go. Compose a hit song in his assessments in music. Compose a hit song. When I click on it, you can see a big fat nothing, which is very disappointing because I thought after all the work that we did here, the student can see, because we've released the details, here's the criteria, but what they can see is a big fat nothing, which I don't think is good enough for the students and parents, and I think it's confusing for them if you haven't done a rubric and put the rubric somewhere in Seqta. It can be confusing. I think it would be good for them to look in their assessments and be able to see what actually is in the assessment. I'm sure you agree. What I discovered is that if I put some information in assessment overview at the bottom, that will come up. So I'm going to write criteria, the 3 bits of criteria here, which is more important than the accessible criteria. You could even put page 1, page 2, page 3. You could put minimal information here because the student's not seeing it, and you could put the actual criteria here. So I'm going to write 1, 8 bars Mixcraft. This is more important than the list. 2, mix, whatever that was, and then 3, mix down to MP3. I'm putting my criteria here. And then what happens when I do that, I save it. We're not finished yet, so make sure you watch the end of this. There's a few things I think you need to see. When you go into Dylan's view, if I refresh, all of a sudden he gets some details, overview, which I think is important, that he can see these are the things that are being marked. As you know, students need all the help they can get. We can't assume that because there's a task sheet or you've talked about it that they actually know what's in the assessment. I think that's really helpful for them. But wait, there's more. So there's 2 more things I want to discuss. One is adding a rubric and making this your rubric rather than recreating a rubric would be good. I'm going to create those 3 lines. I'm going to do numeric I'm going to add a rubric line and add 3 because I've got 3 bits of criteria. This can just be, this doesn't really matter. I'm just doing this fast, criteria 3. But in this section here, in my descriptor, that's what they're going to see. So I'm going to write 8 bars in mixed craft. Just, I can copy and paste whatever my criteria is. Mix, blah, 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 and then mix to MP3. As you can see, I'm not doing this very thoroughly. And I'm going to put those scores in. And then I'm going to save, okay? And now there's a rubric. So when I save that, that will now be in Dylan's. If I refresh, when you go to Dylan's assessment, there'll be a nice little rubric there. And I think that that's nice. I think, oh, it's actually in the wrong spot for whatever reason, but oh, that's right, because it's under that. So you could do a rubric instead of doing the criteria. Unfortunately, that particular rubric is just underneath 8 bars on mixed craft. So the way to do a rubric would be not to do the criteria, or just to do the one line of 3 elements of criteria and then put the rubric in. I think you can see that we're just talking about giving them more information. So feel free to play around with that. I think it's really nice for the students and parents to be able to see that. And hopefully we're not doubling up if we go into Seqta and do things on the back end. We won't have to do it the opposite way, which is to then have done all the work and then have to replicate it in Seqta. It would be better not to do it like that. It's also important that you know that students can upload their work directly into the assessment on Seqta by you clicking the on button on file upload e-submission. And I'll show you what happens if I save that. And I go back into Dylan's. You'll see submissions and I can now upload a file. And I thought that might be handy for you rather than using Teams, Microsoft Teams or another way to get assessments. You might want to get it directly into Seqta. I think it's lovely and clean, and then that's also in Mark's books, and when you're writing some feedback, the actual document is in there too. Okay, so it's a nice little handy thing to know that you can have the students put their assessment straight in. I hope that helps you. If you have any questions, let me know. But I think this assessment overview bit in particular is really important, just to put a little bit of criteria in there. All right, thanks guys.